Hello, hello. Welcome to Inside the Huddle, a brand spanking new sports podcast here, presented by me, Logan Gilchrist, and my roommate on that side of my screen, because it's flipped, Cody Frederick. This is our brand new sports podcast. We're going to be talking about whatever sports we want to, whatever comes to mind. It's not going to be super serious, kind of just going to be having fun, chatting, kind of like water cooler talk. That's the whole vibe, the plan with this podcast. We'll be taking questions from the audience in Twitch chat, and our VODs will be uploaded to YouTube a day or two later. Quick introduction in case you have no idea who we are. My name is Logan Gilchrist. My sports credentials, I was a sports media major for 2-3 years. I've taken multiple broadcasting classes, different ethics and law classes, blah, blah, blah. I've done radio broadcast for Husker Sports and high school sports here in the southeastern area of Nebraska. And I've been a contributor at the Brooklyn game covering the Brooklyn Nets for 3 years now, I think. So those are kind of my credentials, so to speak. And I will throw it over to co-host Cody Frederick so he can tell you about all of his long resume list of crazy accomplishments.
Yeah, there we go. So I'm Cody Frederick. Logan said, my resume is rather long, so probably gonna forget some. But, I'm a sports media major, a broadcasting and journalism major at UNL. Work right now for the Lincoln Journal Star, covering high school volleyball in the southeast corner of the Nebraska area. I previously worked for the Daily News, kind of in the same capacity, so covering high school sports in northeast Nebraska. I've called Husker games. I've worked ESPN College Game Day when they came here for the Ohio State game, and Nebraska smashed, but it's still a really cool experience. And yeah, so that's kind of my sports credentials.
Awesome. Cody Frederick is the brains behind the operation. You're not going to find a better expert on high school volleyball than him. He's been working at it for a couple of weeks now, and he's incredible.
Definitely improving.
Hey, that's what we're all about, is improvement. Speaking of improvement, perfect segue. Our first topic we're going to cover on today's show is Nebraska Cornhusker football, baby. There's nothing more Nebraska than Nebraska football. And speaking of improvement, I think it's undeniable to say that our program has seen improvement in its 3 games that they have played so far. What do you think, Cody? Would you agree with that statement?
I'm not sure quite yet if you can say there's been improvement. I guess it'd be more, to me, they've done what they should have done. I guess also kind of figure out exactly where this team is at when they play on the road this Saturday at Oklahoma, the number three team in the country. So we'll see.
Are they number 3 now?
Yeah, they're number 3.
Jesus. Oh my God. Yeah. Well,
they're also the spread. They're favored by 23. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
I mean, come on, there's been improvement, right? We lost to Illinois, and now everybody's saying Illinois is not even going to beat another team all year. And then our second game against Fordham, it was okay. But I think the third game versus Buffalo, it was pretty good, and it wasn't as close as the score indicated. I think that's some improvement, right?
Yeah, I know we talked before the Buffalo game kind of about our score predictions, and a lot of people were picking Nebraska by 2 touchdowns. I had us just by 3 points, so I did not have the highest expectations for that game, so I was rather pleased to see the outcome, although we did end up leaving 30 points on the field. We had 3 touchdowns that get called back because of penalties, and then the last year's Big Ten Kicker of the Year, Connor Culp, missed 3 pretty close field goals. So yeah, we left a lot of points.
That sounds like a pretty like classic Nebraska thing, right? Kicker of the year, whatever, comes in and just misses everything. Sounds about par for the course.
It really did. Yeah, it looked about exactly like Nebraska played every other year. A little bit of difference. They did take some deep shots to Samori Toure. Martinez had two 68-yard touchdowns to him, which is kind of different other than they have done in previous years. It used to be a lot more of a short game. Right now, kind of big play or nothing.
Mm-hmm. Tweety Treat I am in the chat instantly goes for the question that every Nebraska fan has been asking themselves for the last 3 years. She says, "Our backup QB should be our first string," with the shrug emoji. So, so I think that kind of, one of our topics that we had on the docket for today's episode was is it time to move on from Adrian Martinez? And we came up with this topic after the first game, so it's maybe it looks a little maybe silly now after 3 games because he is like top 10 in the nation for QBR in college, and he's had you can say the opponents haven't been the strongest, obviously, but the numbers are still good, and that's including the really bad game he had versus Illinois. So we've been having this conversation between ourselves for a couple weeks, but I think now is a good time to revisit it when you're looking at it because after the first week, I think a lot of people were definitely saying Adrian Martinez is just not the guy. He's a liability. Has your opinion on that changed after these 3 games, Cody? Or are you still in that I don't think Adrian's that good camp?
I would definitely say to me that Adrian should still be the starter. I know kind of how it looks with how Logan Smothers, the number two quarterback, has looked the last 2 games against Fordham and Buffalo. There's just some other things to remember. Smothers came in during garbage time in both games, so he's playing against a lot of backups. Also, he's playing against their starters once they were gassed. Um, Also, Smothers, if you really want to compare his style, he's a lot more of a running quarterback. His it's kind of yet to be seen. So if you're looking for a comparison, it's a lot like Nebraska's former Luke McCaffrey. And
You
then
kind of
people
cut
are
out
really
right
for
there for a little bit. I think what you were trying to say was that Logan Smothers' passing game isn't maybe quite as developed. He's more of a running QB. Is that what you're trying to say?
yeah. He compares to Nebraska's former quarterback Luke McCaffrey. Doesn't have the best arm, but he's really great on the ground. And then people are really quick to forget about Adrian. His freshman year, or going into his sophomore season, he was in contention for a dark horse Heisman candidate. So you know that talent's still in there somewhere. Uh, it's been a tough couple of years, so we really haven't seen it yet. But he definitely has that big play ability, as he kind of showed last Saturday.
I think that's definitely accurate, and I would just like to point out right now that Logan's mother is in the chat suggesting that we should be playing Logan Smothers over Adrian Martinez. So I think that's just too good to not point out, not acknowledge right there. That's I think for me, I was in the camp where even after the first week, where I think that Adrian Martinez is not how would you say this? He's not the best quarterback, but he's the right level of quarterback for Nebraska right now. It seems really hard for me to envision Nebraska as a program finding a QB that would outperform Adrian day to day, game to game. And I think that's exactly why you see, even though Frost has experimented with these other quarterbacks, more so than I think most coaches do in college football, but still, Adrian Martinez is always ends up coming out on top. So even I don't think he's great, but he's definitely better than the options we have right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, so both of our backup quarterbacks that are freshmen this year have not played a collegiate game until this season, so they don't have the most experience. The other backup quarterback, Matt Masker, is on still, I believe, so he really knows the system because he's been there just as long as Adrian, but he's not the most talented guy in the world. But yeah, Adrian, he really has that big play threat. I'll keep going back to that. I like to compare him to a basketball player who is really good at making 3 pointers, but you give him a open fast break a layup, and sometimes he's just going to miss it. So that's just kind of where Adrian's at right now.
I think that's true. I think Tweety Treat I am in the chat says hashtag facts. Meh Martinez is unstable, unpredictable. The only guarantee per game is that he's gonna throw an interception. Smothers at least has solid potential. I think there could be an argument that Smothers, if you gave him time, could maybe outperform Adrian Martinez, but I don't think Scott Frost is willing to take that risk with his current standing in the program and his current maybe job security or so forth. Um, I think that when it comes down to it, Adrian Martinez is unpredictable. And I just, yeah, I'll second basically what you said there, where he's going to miss some really easy throws, and you're going to be like, what the hell is going on? Like, I could hit those throws. But then he's going to have like a 20-plus yard run where he just makes something out of nothing. And I think that's a skill that you can't teach. I don't think you can teach that to QBs. So, like, the best at it, obviously, if you just look overall, like Patrick Mahomes is the quintessential, like, he's got the it factor where when a play has broken down, fallen apart, he's somehow going to make something insane happen. And I think while you could say Adrian Martinez, the only guarantees he's going to throw at least an interception a game, I think you also have a guarantee that there's going to be at least one play each game where you're just going to look in like, how the hell did Martinez get away with that, you know?
Yeah. Quick question. Are you telling me Martinez is going to beat Mahomes in the NFL? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying Martinez is going to be the number one overall pick. He is going to dethrone Pat Mahomes. He'll probably get drafted by Kansas City. You know, I'm confident.
Hot take, but yeah, just for the record, Martinez this season has thrown no interceptions yet. He has, I think, fumbled it once or twice, but he really, so far, has actually done a pretty good job of taking care of it.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Like I said earlier, he's top 10 in the country right now for QBR. So I mean, I would definitely say the problem for Nebraska this season, you could definitely argue in previous season, like especially last season, QB play was an issue. But this season so far, I don't think that QB play has really been the biggest weak point. I think obviously the defense has been the biggest strength, but I think there are other issues. Obviously, the biggest one that comes to mind is special teams, which has been a walking disaster for Nebraska this season. But there are also greater issues or bigger holes on the offense than Adrian Martinez. And if I was looking to upgrade Nebraska's team, Adrian Martinez would not be where I'm looking right now. You have to fix all the gaping holes in special teams before you even start to worry about getting a better QB, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have more time later on in other podcasts to get more into it, but I'd say number one problem right now is just attention to detail and focus. A lot of times they just get kind of lackadaisical and they'll turn the ball over when it's a pretty easy return, or will be a holding penalty when they wasn't even in their area. So it's just really kind of the attention to detail. And then, yeah, the other thing is the offensive line play just really hasn't been up to caliber to where it should be. They've really got no push in the running game. I think Nebraska so far this year is only averaging like 3.3 yards a carry, which is not really going to get it done in the Big Ten. So in a lot of ways, they're lucky to even have Martinez be able to break off those 70-yard runs because it really helps their stats look better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could make an argument, and it wouldn't be too crazy to say that Martinez is the best running back on the team. You could make that argument.
I think, honestly, even.
All right. Commercial break's still going for 37 seconds, but I don't think that really matters. What? I don't remember what you were saying. We were talking about you could make an argument that Adrian Martinez is the best running back on Nebraska's team right now, and you were talking about that, I think.
Yeah, and then I was trying to say that last year McCaffrey and Martinez were really the two best running backs on our team.
Yeah, I think that's probably a reasonable take. Yeah. Yeah, cut out a little
All
bit.
right.
We'll be
well, we can probably transition in the NFL.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, we have a lot to say about Nebraska, and we'll probably have a Nebraska section with either football, volleyball. We're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff on future episodes. But we're pretty excited to talk about the NFL because week 1 of NFL just got wrapped up last night. And there were some crazy games, some crazy upsets, some crazy scores that we we were witness to. I don't even know where to start. Where do you want to start talking about NFL? We could talk about Monday Night Football because that just got over.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. So that was one heck of a game.
That's one way to put it. I ran into when I was talking to Angelo earlier today, our friend Angelo on the basketball courts. He was telling me how it was a crazy, insane game, and I was like, I thought that was one of the ugliest games. Not the ugliest game of the weekend, but what I saw from those two teams did not leave me feeling good or inspired about either of them. Do you disagree, or?
Yeah, I would say the Raiders probably are at this point are not a playoff team. Ravens still have the capability to be a wild card team, but they've just gone through so many injuries. Like they said last night, 13 players on injury reserve, and it's really hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I would hate to be a Ravens fan this season because like every single they're a crippled team. Like you can't this season it feels
Like I
like
said,
you're wasting one of Lamar Jackson's like prime years. I'm not sure if he's in his prime or if he's still going to enter and level up, but like you're wasting a year of a really good QB because your team is saddled with so much injuries. That's got to feel terrible.
their medical staff might be getting fired at the end of the season. I
I
don't know.
if I was the conditioning staff, the training, I'd be sweating right now. It's getting hot if you're on the Ravens medical training conditioning teams. That's okay. So I have to talk about this because I saw it earlier today, and for YouTube I'll throw it up somewhere. But I saw a power ranking list today that, and I already told Cody about this. I saw a power rankings list that was made today that had the Ravens number 10 and the Bills at like number 6 and the Browns in the top 5, and it had my Pittsburgh Steelers at 11. This is inexplicable to me. Okay, you cannot tell me the Steelers are worse than the Ravens right now. One, the Steelers played a better team than the Ravens in week 1 in the Bills. Nobody's going to disagree. The Bills are much better than the Raiders. Two, the Steelers beat the better team that they played. They actually beat the Bills. Meanwhile, the Ravens lost to the Raiders, a worse team, which nobody will disagree with. Finally, the Ravens are so banged up and injured, I don't understand how you can have them in the top 10 teams in the NFL right now. It makes no sense to me. Now, also the fact that the Bills are above the Steelers, even though the Steelers just beat them in Buffalo, that's also suspicious. A bit more acceptable than the Ravens. And I can understand the Browns, even though they lost in week 1 and the Steelers are 1. The Browns played the Chiefs, who I think is one of the best teams in the NFL, and they barely lost. It was a close game. So I can understand still putting the Browns above the Steelers. But the Ravens? The Ravens above the Steelers? That I can't comprehend it. I just can't.
I'm kind of with you on that one. Although we can talk more about your Steelers here. So
Okay.
as we kind of got into it, I told you the Steelers front seven is elite, but you're the one who sent me the graph of Ben Roethlisberger and where he was placed on that chart. What was it, a QBR chart?
Yeah, it was expected points. It was EPA, expected points average per play, versus that was on the x-axis. The y-axis was the power or the Pro Football Focus ranking, and what it said basically was while Ben Roethlisberger was near the lower end of QBs, like in the bottom 10, PFF rated him in their ratings extremely low compared to the production he was putting up. So they basically said the worst 2 QBs in the league right now, or at least after week 1, were Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers, which is kind of insane to think about.
They had probably the worst two performances. I'm not going to say they think they're the two worst, but out of week one performances, yeah, it did not look good for either of them.
Okay, I could see Aaron Rodgers. Okay, the highlight clip of him missing all those open throws. He had a bad week, but you're gonna tell me that Big Ben had a bottom two week in the NFL. I'm gonna go see if I can find that chart. But you really think he was one of the worst two QBs to perform?
Listen, I heard people talking about it all over Twitter, and there's a reason for it. There's no way that you can come into a season and have Ben Roethlisberger look as old as he did and have it turn out well on the back end in December and January.
All right, I'm gonna link this in the chat and I'll put it somewhere for YouTube. The chart says that. Okay, so if you look at the EPA, you're telling me that Ben Roethlisberger had a worse performance than Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill? I'm not sure I buy that. It says if you look at the actual, they take EPA plus completion percentage over expected in the index. Ben Roethlisberger's stats were better than Josh Allen, who he played against, who people say are a top 3, top 5 QB in the league. And Josh Allen was rated slightly under 70, while Ben Roethlisberger was rated under 40 by PFF. They say he is the worst QB in the league. And the stats simply don't back that statement up. But Cody agrees with it, I guess.
I don't know. I'd have to look more at it, but he definitely, for me, probably had one of the top 5 worst performances in the opening weekend.
I would say I'd put Rodgers worse, Lawrence worse, Zach Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Andy Dalton. That's 5 right there that I think were worse. But we can agree to disagree.
Andy Dalton shouldn't even count because Fields should start. So.
Andy Dalton shouldn't even be in the league. He's not a real QB.
Shouldn't be starting.
That's probably an agreeable take. But enough about my Steelers, all right? We all know the Steelers are stairway to 7 playoff bound. No question in my mind. Top of the division after week 1. But what else happened around the league? What was kind of crazy that happened?
Well, my Vikings lost in overtime to the Bengals.
To the Bengals. AFC North represent.
The Bengals. Yeah, so on the bright side, the Vikings are still tied for first place in the division at 0-1.
That's a stout division. Impressive that they're still managed to be tied for first after week 1 with how tough their competition is.
Yeah, I was really, really disappointed in their offensive line play. In case you didn't know, Kirk Cousins is not the most mobile quarterback.
Yeah.
And he really, their offensive line could not protect, and he was facing pressure the whole game. Mm-hmm. And then I expected their defense to be much improved, and to be honest, I didn't think it really was all that much. They got back a lot of their starters that they lost last year, but I think they lost one safety and one corner to free agency, and so their secondary still needs a lot of work. And their starting linebacker, Anthony Barr, was out for the first game, so it could end up being a long season for my Vikings.
All right, Cody. I've got some news, some stats here that are probably going to hurt you. So I need to know, are you in the right mental headspace right now to receive news that may be emotionally harming to you? Here's the context.
Never, but let's go for it anyway.
Cody's a Vikings fan. I'm a Steelers fan in NFL. But I am much higher on Kirk Cousins than Cody. Cody thinks he's a bum, washed, needs to go. And I actually think he's not that bad. So let me read to you.
The word I used was bum. All right, I didn't say wash because he's not old. I just said he's a bum.
He's just a bum. Okay. He's just a bum. So on that same chart that has Ben Roethlisberger as the worst QB in the league in Week 1, let me read to you the 3 QBs that are closest to Kirk Cousins in production. The 3 closest to him are Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, and Tom Brady. And right next to him, the fourth closest, Kyler Murray. Every stat shows that Kirk Cousins is not a bad QB, Cody. So I understand your eye test conflicts with that, but if the stats show that Kirk Cousins isn't the problem with the Vikings, what's the problem with the Vikings?
All right. I don't think Cousins is the problem, but he's not the solution either. Yeah. So when you have Dalvin Cook in your backfield and you have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson as your wide receivers, yeah, your quarterback rating should look pretty good at the end of the day. But it's more of the fact that even going back a couple of years ago when we had basically everything around Cousins, he's not the guy who can take you over the top and get you to the Super Bowl. He's just not that guy. He, at best, is an average quarterback, and he's good enough to get you to probably the divisional round of the playoffs. But I don't think, even on his best day, that he can take you any further.
Okay, well then the question is the Vikings franchise at a point right now where they are in that win now mode where you want to be competing for Super Bowls year after year? Is that where they want to be as an organization, or are they simply trying to be, well, first let's just become perennial playoff contenders and at least show we can get there year after year and so forth? Or do you think that they're kind of, with the talent they have right now, it's kind of, this is a good chance and you should go all in for a title?
To be honest, right now, I would compare them to a middle pack NBA team where you're neither bad enough to really tank and try to get a good draft pick, but you're not good enough to reach that top end either. So the money they have locked into Kirk Cousins' contract, they're kind of stuck for a couple of more years until they're able to get out of it. And so as a fan, it's really frustrating because, there's really nothing more that they can do to go for that title because, again, they're locked in the Cousins contract.
Wait a minute. I just thought of the perfect comparison. This is going to be so good.
What's that?
This is going to be so good. And just for context, when it comes to NBA, I'm a Nets fan and Cody's a Lakers fan, so he's going to really love this one. So what you basically told me, the first thing that came to mind is the current Vikings are essentially the Russell Westbrook-led Thunder from 3 to 4 years ago, where he's good enough where he can get you into the playoffs as a lower seed, but you will pretty much never win a series with just Russ there. And the team is stuck in that purgatory, like you said, where we're good enough, where we're not getting lottery picks, but we're not good enough where we're actually making any deep runs or splashes. Is that what you're saying?
I even would go so far to compare them as to the old Blake Griffin, Doc Rivers Clippers, where they're good enough to really reach that first round or the second round in the playoffs, but there's just, you always, as a fan, are left wanting more, and they're not able to give you it with the pieces they have on their roster right now.
Uh-huh. So, my follow-up question to the follow-up to the follow-up is, do you think there's even a QB in the league right now who would be available that the Vikings could get that would put them in the same tier as, say, the Chiefs or Bucks? Because I'm not sure there is. I don't think there's a big enough upgrade over Kirk that's available in the league right now to get you there. If you look at last offseason, maybe the biggest move was Matt Stafford to the Rams. I don't think Matt Stafford is a huge upgrade or big enough upgrade over Kirk to really move the needle. Do you disagree?
I don't think that the way to finding a quarterback is through free agency. So I don't think anybody could really significantly upgrade where they're at through getting another free agency quarterback, because there's a reason that quarterback is on the free agency market. So the thing is, the Vikings had a chance in this draft last year's draft to trade up and draft Justin Fields. And the rival Chicago Bears did it instead. And it was really, really disappointing to see him go there because I think, given, not saying this year, but I think 3, 4 years down the road, Justin Fields could already, just because of his mobility, be at a higher place than Kirk Cousins has been.
Okay, I'm looking at that trade right now because I didn't see what the terms of that trade were. In the Bears
Yeah, I
traded
think
up
they drafted him at 12th or 11th,
at
and they
11.
traded up like one pick. Yeah.
Okay, the Bears traded up from pick 22, number 11. In the deal, they received the 11th pick. They sent the 20th pick to the Giants, along with a 2022 first round, 2022 fourth round, and a fifth round pick for 2021. You think the
And
Vikings could have matched that type of offer?
I absolutely think so. I guess I'm not for sure exactly what they have in draft capital right now, but
Yeah.
I believe their draft pick was number 15. So they only had to jump 4 more spots. And they were, this gets into management that they were too complacent with what they have and felt that they could just stick there when I, for one, thought they should have made that move and drafted Justin Fields. But instead, they drafted Kellen Mond, Texas A&M's quarterback, in the second round,
Mm-hmm.
and he's never going to be like Justin Fields.
Yeah, I definitely see that's an example where people only think about trades that like you make a trade and that hurts you, but something that the average fan doesn't see and you only really get if you're more involved is the where teams don't make trades and it comes to hurt them. I think that happens a lot more. Like the classic example I think of relating it to the NBA is Danny Ainge with the Celtics, where everybody for years were like, you have all of these good players, good young players,
Right?
draft picks, and you're never pulling the trigger on like an Anthony Davis level player. Are you going to come back to regret that? So I guess that's kind of what I see here with the Vikings. But we could talk about the
Yeah,
Vikings
it's
for
kind of the
30
same thing.
minutes.
Right, right. It's kind of the same thing as what the Oklahoma City Thunder are going through right now with Sam Presti stockpiling all his draft picks. They eventually, you got to make a move and try to get somebody. Otherwise, draft picks aren't really worth all that much.
I think that's true, but I think OKC is in a much stronger position right now than because they're earlier in that timeline. If we were to go 2 to 3 years and they still haven't made any real moves, I would agree with you, but I think they have time. But one question, the last thing I'll say about the Vikings, we've been talking about the Vikings for a while, is which performance from your division is more embarrassing? The Vikings losing to the Bengals in overtime or the Packers getting obliterated by the Saints 38-3? Which one would you say is worse?
Listen, I think the Bengals are a team kind of on the come up. Um, they're in a difficult division with your Steelers, the Ravens, and the Browns, but they have loads of talent with Joe Burrow at quarterback and now Jamar Chase outside at wide receiver. The Packers losing to the Saints, it was more just a lack of effort, it appeared, and really a lack of being motivated. It looked like they didn't really care whether they won or lost, and it came through and showed on the field. So to me, that is more embarrassing than the Vikings losing to the Bengals, especially because the Vikings only lost by 3 in overtime.
All right, I can see that. I think that was the worst game. I agree. I saw Skip Bayless say it, and I agree. Or maybe it was Stephen A. Smith. Uh, that was the worst game I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers play. It was ugly. I saw a whole minute highlight of him missing the easiest throws. Uh, the like we talked about earlier, the only two options I can see are one, either Aaron Rodgers really doesn't want to play for the Packers and he does not give a single shit and he wants out basically, or two, he is somehow that washed up and bad now after one offseason. One offseason removed from an amazing season and now he's suddenly terrible. And we were talking about I don't know which one would be worse or sadder. I think if Aaron Rodgers
I
is
am.
actually this bad, it would be terrible, like for the league overall? Just the league's going to be worse off if we lose Rodgers this quickly out of nowhere.
I think, to be honest, it's probably a combination of both. So he looked like how he played on Sunday. It looked like as if he wished he was still relaxing on a beach, which he was doing all throughout training camp. So he didn't get all the reps he normally did or get into that flow. He just kind of came in and expected to jump right back to where he was. And it was pretty clear he wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those things like he doesn't realize at the time he came off such a great season, and he's got the ego, the overconfidence, where he's like, I'm good enough that I don't need those reps. But now his age is starting to actually catch up with him, and he's like, oh shit, I can't make these same throws and movements that I did without practicing and warming up and stuff.
In a weird way, I'd compare it to how James Harden played for the Rockets last season when he came in overweight and not in the best shape because he had been out partying because he didn't really care and he wanted to leave.
Yeah, but the difference is James Harden was still dropping 40 points over and over, and Aaron Rodgers was dropping 40 drops. I don't know, 40 misses.
Yeah.
But,
I agree.
Okay, let's look at like some of the teams that got upset or had really bad performances in week 1, and let's see like which ones we think are going to bounce back and which ones will not. So,
all right, this will probably be our last topic of the day, by the way.
Yeah, Cody's a very busy man with all of his credentials. He's got interviews, people to talk to. He's making money moves.
Always.
Okay. Ravens lost to the Raiders. It was close, but they got upset. Packers got destroyed. Browns barely lost. Titans. Okay, so we have let's get some candidates. Titans, Packers, Ravens. I don't think the Bears will be that good. Browns. We'll add the Browns. And Cowboys looked good too. Falcons. Nobody's got really high.
Bears.
Bills would be good. All right. Do you think the Bears are going to be good?
Who, the Bears?
Yeah, do you think they're going to be good?
If they play Justin Fields, they're a fringe wild card team.
They also had to play the Rams in week 1, arguably the best team in the league according to some lists I've seen. But let's look at these teams. Ravens are too injured. I'm going to take them off. Let's look at Packers, Titans, Bills. The Packers, Titans, and Bills. Bills lost to the Steelers, Titans lost to the Cardinals, and Packers got destroyed by the Saints. Out of those 3 teams, how likely do you think each of them are to bounce back and actually be the teams that people expected them to be coming into this season? Now I'm going to run down Twitch chat.
Packers, Titans, Bills is what you were saying?
Yes, Packers, Titans, Bills.
I think the Packers are good enough with Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams out on the outside that they can bounce back and be good enough to be probably at most an 11-win team. I don't think they're their usual selves just because of all the drama that's been going on within their organization, but I still think they could easily win the division of the NFC North and make the playoffs.
They're still tied for first, baby.
Yeah. What say you? What do you say?
Huh?
What do you say?
What do I say?
What are your thoughts on the Packers?
On the Packers?
Yeah.
I think it really depends if week 1 was just an aberration or if that's going to be Aaron Rodgers' continued level of performance until either he starts to care or plays himself into shape. If that's going to be Aaron Rodgers' level of performance, you're not going to win games. You cannot win games with a QB who performs that poorly in the NFL. I think Aaron Rodgers looked like a bottom 3 QB last week, which is insane to say. It's something I never thought I would say in my life, but he looked god awful. If he keeps up at that level and they don't change anything, it doesn't improve, I don't see how they're not a super high pick going into next year. Now, the assumption is that Aaron Rodgers is going to improve. And if he improves, like you said, obviously they're a strong contender, not just to win the division, but they're even a team that people have saying have Super Bowl aspirations. So
Right.
That's kind of my thoughts there. I hope it's not the same level.
Okay. As for the Bills, of course, again, they played your Steelers
Yes,
and
sir.
lost at home. Um, I still think the Bills are a really good team. I think the Steelers this year, if we're going to look at them, I think they start out really well and then kind of fall off towards the end of the year.
A
Whereas
replay
the
of last
Bills,
season.
yeah, yeah, I think they're still pretty much the same team. Um, I think the Bills are a really good team. Will they make it back to the AFC Championship game? It's hard to say. I mean, there's other good teams in the AFC too, besides the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have the Ravens, the Browns. Yeah, lots of good teams in the AFC too. But I think if you want me to be honest, out of all three of those teams we said, the Packers, the Bills, and the Titans, the Bills have the best chance to still reach where most people thought they would this season.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking partly because I'm higher on the Steelers than most people. A little bit of bias maybe, but I think that defense is stout, and I think Big Ben will be
Mm-hmm.
serviceable. He's not going to be great by any means, might not even be good, but he'll be serviceable, which I think is all this team is going to need to get to even double-digit wins, just because of how dominant the defense is. But so I still think the Bills are going to be okay. I would rank them Bills, Packers, Titans in terms of how likely it is they think that they're going to bounce back. But
Agreed.
I still think I would give each of them over 55-60% chance of bouncing back. I still have faith that they're all going to turn it around. Do you think those percentages are about right, or would you rate some of them lower?
I think the Bills probably is higher. I'd say Bills probably around 70% chance. Packers, I'd probably go, yeah, that 55-60% chance range. And then Titans, I mean, they're down there 35-40% chance range.
Wow.
I'm lower on the Titans this year. To me, they're a part of the worst division in football, the AFC South, with the Jags, the Texans, and the Colts as the other teams in that division. So they could still end up really winning that division with a bad record, like an 8-9 record or something. Um, but yeah, they lost or tied most for the most starters lost in the NFL. And yeah, I'm really down on them. Their big move of the offseason was trading for Julio Jones, which in retrospect kind of appears like a desperation move because Julio's not the same player he used to be. He gets injured too often. Um, so yeah, I think out of all those teams, they probably have the highest chance to not reach where they did last season and kind of really they could even miss out on the playoffs.
Okay. So I know you want to go real soon. So this is the last question I'll ask, and then I'll wrap it up. But
Mm-hmm.
considering the fact that they are in maybe the weakest division, if I were to switch that question from do you think they reached their preseason expectations to how likely do you think it is that each of these teams make the playoffs, would your percentages still be the same? Would your order be the same, or would you switch it around at all?
Um, it's a good question.
I I might
I
say
would,
that the Packers might have a tougher time than the Titans just because the Titans don't need to get that good to win their division versus if the Packers stay this bad, you're not going to win that division. There are enough other teams that will punish you versus where I don't think the Titans really have that much competition who's going to punish them. They only need to get like mid-tier good to get to the playoffs by winning their division.
yeah, I would just say that I think I don't know. To me, it's about the same for each team. Maybe the Titans slightly higher just because their other team in their division is the Colts, and they have a lot of injuries too. And then I know they've really been down on getting the vaccine, so they have a high chance of their players missing time. But yeah, Titans are a team that they have a really low chance to me of reaching where they did last season.
That I could definitely agree with. I don't think they're going to have as high of a peak as they did. I think last year the stars aligned, and that's not going to happen again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
All right, but that'll wrap it up. That'll be our last topic for our first episode. Probably a little bit shorter than our normal episodes will be. We're just trying to get everything going, working out technical difficulties and so forth. But that kind of gives you a taste of how the show's going to be. We're kind of just going back, talking about whatever comes to mind. We're not going to be super rigid, formal. We're going to be taking questions from chat, talking about that and everything. But the plan is now tentatively to air this podcast live every Tuesday. We don't have a set time, but we're going to shoot for Tuesday and maybe get uploaded to YouTube by Thursday. But that is the first episode of Inside the Huddle with Logan Gilchrist and Cody Frederick. Thank you for tuning in, watching, listening along. If you want to keep up to date, know when we're going live, get tweets and so forth, follow us on Twitter. Our ats are right there below our names, at LoganLDG, at CodyFrederick15. But that is going to be our first episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.
There we go.